If you're like me and you shoot a lot of B-roll footage and also a lot of film stuff on your mobile phone when you're on the go and you want to take your DSLR or whatever camera with you, then you most often end up using your camera of your phone. Nowadays there are a lot of apps, but there's one app which hit a new major version, the version 6, and that's FilmicPro Pro. And this video will be about all the changes that were made to the UI and to the app overall, and what's special to the Android version. So have fun watching and keep it up. Alright, so this is the new UI of the app. In former times there was a top bar, everything moved to the bottom. In terms of usability, quite nice, and it's not that hidden anymore. And what you have here from left to right is color settings, then manual exposure settings, guides and live view guides. Then here the middle bar is the time code, frames per second, resolution, audio meters or audio levels, and also here the battery status and the storage space left on the phone. Indicator red here for me because I'm running out of space now with my mobile phone. And then you have here the settings overall for the whole app and video, and then here a preview and a video player, as well as the record button itself, and here a zoom slider. First of all, the middle part didn't change that much, so you have your time code, the battery status, the storage space left on your phone, your audio levels, your resolution, which is now 1080p in this case, and 24 frames per second. By tapping on this you can change it. You can display here first of all the histogram for the luminance, so that you can just get an idea on how well lit the image is. Then you have an RGB histogram here, and here you see the distribution of the overall spectrum, color spectrum, so how well shadows and lights are distributed. And that's pretty much it, and by tapping on it you get back to all this, so you can single tap on it and use it as a guide. Second, here's a zoom slider, which I prefer not to use because it's just a digital zoom on this camera, not an optical zoom. So if you have an optical zoom on your mobile phone camera, like on I think the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 7 as well, then you can just use this maybe, but I would avoid it when you just have a zoom on a digital basis. This is indicating based on the zoom level how well the quality of the image is, so it turns from green to yellowish to red. And I'll for sure won't use this at all. And on the bottom right you have other options. So you have the record button, so to start and stop the recording and also pause the recording if you have set it up already. Here you have the gallery with all the short videos with FilmicPro Pro. You can upload them, shorten them, delete them, and so on and so forth. And then you have here the settings. And those settings are really useful because you can tweak a lot. So first of all you can set the resolution here. So it's really important to set the resolution according to your mobile phone capabilities. So in my case the camera shoots up to 4K, and on the bottom you can set the bitrate. That means the higher the bitrate, the better the quality and the more data is stored in a video file or video stream. And this can be up to 100 megabits per second and down to 25 megabits per second. So I would recommend, based on the specs of your phone, that you range roughly between 50 and 100 megabits per second for 4K. And if you're, for example, shooting in 1080p because you want to have higher frame rates, then you maybe just bump it up to 50 megabits per second. And that's also dependent on the resolution you have chosen. So 1080p is maximum 50 megabits per second. Everything from 2K upwards can be up to 100 megabits per second, so I've chosen this. What you can also select is the codec, so just by sliding up and down you can have a newer codec, the HEV codec. That's I think the H.265, and the AVC is the H.264 codec if I'm not wrong. And you can also select here different crop factors for your image. So you see here like darkened areas on the top and bottom, or left and right, depending on the crop factor you're using. And you can also select cinematic formats like this one. So you can also crop the source to the overlay. This means that the video file will have this aspect ratio finally, and not the 16:9, which is standard. And you can also just deactivate this crop source to overlay to just display guides. So that's useful when you want to shift impose some sort of image part on the top, bottom, whatsoever. So me personally, I usually shoot in 16:9, or would just display this to 39:1 and not crop this at all. I would not crop the source to overlay because you end up losing some of the information on the sensor, and I think that's maybe really versatile in post to just leave it. If you tap back on the video image, then you get back to the main menu. Set the frame rate, so depending on what you have chosen, I'm now in the 4K. Here you see here, then you can choose up to 30 frames per second. You can also set time lapses, so that it just captures a frame a second or every minute or whatsoever, so up to you. And you can also select the playback frames per second. That's the thing, how fast the video should playback later on when it's open in a video player or on your mobile phone or an editing software. And then there's an experimental feature on Android. Due to the fact that the Android phones differ a lot from manufacturer to manufacturer, it's important to keep this in mind. I would just activate forced FPS. So this means it tries to force the camera API of the Android phone to shoot at this set frame rate. In my case here, 24 frames per second, because on Android there are some hassles regarding constant frame rates, because they differ from time to time from video file to video file, even though it's still the same circumstances. In this case I set it to 24 frames per second for cinematic look, also playback 24 frames per second, and force the experimental frame rate. And then you can also set audio levels, or at least you can set the inputs. So camera microphone, the internal microphone, as I'm using usually something like this Rode video mic here. For shooting and for better sound, I would choose the external microphone, and also a bitrate of 48 kHz for better quality. You can also activate video only without any audio recorded, and you can also enable voice processing, whatever this means. I didn't try this out yet. Maybe for a later video. It's quite versatile. I think it will be some sort of setting to just record voice or vocal stuff and to enhance it. Then you can also select here the orientation lock for the device, so when you move your device around, that it's not changing the orientation from landscape to portrait mode, for example, or vice versa. You can also stitch recorded footage. If you turn this on, then the record button would get into a mode where you can pause the recording and continue recording, and you can then, I think via long press or double tap, stop the recording. Then you can enable GPS tagging for your videos, which I turned off, for example, because it's not that important. You can activate preview, and you can tap to hide interface. If you activated this, then you can just go here, and then by tapping you can just hide the whole interface for a more precise and more on-point shooting experience. And then you can also set here hide reticles with interface, and you can also hide zoom rocker. This is this bar here, because I won't use it, I will hide it. And you can mute notifications, for example, to not be bothered with push notifications while shooting something. In this case, I would also recommend when you start shooting on your mobile phone that you turn on the flight mode to not be somehow interfered with calls or push notifications. And also if you're using an external microphone, that you don't have any noise and beeps and bips on your audio. To avoid this, I would always turn on the flight mode when shooting. Then you can also save this to presets and also recall presets here. That's quite versatile when you, for example, switch between different resolutions, bit rates, and front and back camera, for example, with different settings. Then you can just prepare some of the presets here, which are also then synced here with the FilmicPro Pro sync. You have to log in there, and then it will upload those settings and presets to cloud servers, and then you can also just grab them on another device and don't have to set up everything again. Then you can also set here the metadata for production, for example, for a scene, for a take, and so on and so forth. I think that's stored in a metadata file parallel to the MP4. And you can also hook up and enable hardware stuff. So anamorphic lens adapters, 35mm adapter, or the DJI Osmo Mobile, which is quite versatile because it's a handheld gimbal and it will enhance your mobile shooting a lot. You can have a look at the community, review this app, FilmicPro Pro website visit, and so on and so forth. And you get an overview here of all your setup stuff, so where your files are stored. So there are, for example, also Android phones which have an SD card storage, which is quite versatile. Then you can also see here what's set on the sound and so on and so forth. And you can also turn on here stabilization on and off. So in this case, for my phone, for the OnePlus 3T, it's just an electronic stabilizer which is analyzing the image and then just tries to crop in a bit and to stabilize the footage. You can also just invert the camera, hello, and that's it basically for all the camera settings. And what you can also use is your flashlight, LED flashlight in front of the camera to just lighten the scene. But in fact that this is not that good, I would more or less suggest to use something external for lighting, like this nice aperture light here, a little one, small one, which is not that expensive, 50 bucks roughly, and it's quite nice to light up or light scenes. You see here. You can also display guides here, and you can also grab some information, quick start guide, user manual, tutorial, support page, and you can also see the version here. It's a 6.0.0. And that's pretty much it on the right side. Let's start with the guides. That's the A button here. And it's giving you 4 options. That means it's a live analytic and it's doing this live and overlaying the image. And there are 4 different options. There's a zebra pattern, clipping. Third is false color pattern. And the fourth is focus peaking. So focus peaking obviously is quite versatile because you will see here a lot of coloring, green and blue. And this means that you have more accuracy when you want to set a manual focus for the image. That means that the green indicates the target, which is in critical focus, and the blue one is indicating areas of focus, so which are slightly in focus at least. So you should focus, wordplay. You should really concentrate on the green indicators because that's the things that are in focus. So let's go to the next one, false colors. That's the option on the third here. False color is just a complete picture of your video with an exposure profile. That means green is good and red and blue is bad. So the red indicates an overexposure and the blue indicates an area of underexposure. So to say here, this is underexposed, the hole in here, it's dark in here in the shelf, and also those speakers are black, they're somehow underexposed, and the red one, the white, you see here, this area here is overexposed somehow because it has a lot of bright light, and therefore it's indicating this in a red scheme as well as the logo of the Focusrite audio interface. The clipping overlay shows you just the areas of exposure that are not recoverable at all. So you can't recover blue or red areas because it's just like a white red area is 255 in terms of RGB color spectrum on all levels, and the blue is everything 000 in terms of RGB profile and RGB color spectrum. So you can't recover anything by doing this in post. The zebra pattern is just here to show you also under and overexposed areas, but it's a bit different in terms of visualization. So it's more a matter of taste how you use this stuff. So this one is really straightforward, known from a lot of cameras, and other cameras or at least external camera monitors would, for example, do the false color profile. So this is really pro feature stuff. The manual dials are here to, on the right side, set focus on a manual basis. So you see here, you can just dial in a really specific focus, or you can also use it as a zoom dial. I would just avoid this and just set the focus here, just zoom out completely. And on the left side you can set the ISO and the shutter speed, and this means here on the top it's the ISO, on the bottom it's the shutter speed, and you can lock it as well. So when I shoot at 24 frames per second, I would like to have a shutter speed of 1/48 of a second, so it's just double the frame rate. And then I can just lock it and it turns red, and then you could just move the dial and it's just dialing in a different ISO setting, which is quite nice. So you have to just see if you want to avoid a certain ISO because of noise which is introduced to the image. You can just lock one of it. You can also lock the ISO as well, and then it's just changing the shutter speed. What you can also do by slightly swiping over those three dots here, it's giving you the option to prioritize either the ISO change or the shutter speed change, or to just keep it as it is in the middle point here to just set the equality of both ISO and shutter speed. And also the changes that are made to the shutter speed and to the focus can be set. So the pull speed, basically, it's always indicating what you're changing here on the top. And when you put drag down the pull speed, then you can just change it a bit slower. So it's not that harsh anyhow. But I think it's okay in the middle. And same here, you can just pull it down completely, the exposure pull speed, and then you can just slightly pull down the exposure at all. Yeah, okay, and when you tap in here, then you can just go back, just release this, and then you see it's both locked. So when you have the red indicator on the circle and the rectangle, then you can be sure that both settings are locked. And you can just unlock it by tapping on it, and then you can move it around as well to just use a certain part of the image to set the exposure and the focus. So you see here, you can just set the exposure based on the image part I'm dragging it to, and then you can just by a single tapping again on it, lock it again. That's quite versatile when you want to set up an image or a video frame, and then you want to just lock those settings to not change during one shoot. Because usually on mobile, for example, the focus hunts a bit and it's just refocusing from time to time. And last but not least, you can also set color now in a very convenient way. There's the upper tab, and this is giving you the chance to set the white balance really specific. Just turn the tinting and the Kelvin in here, dialing in Kelvin and tint, for example. You can set auto white balance. I have different presets from light bulb, sun, cloudy weather to neon light, for example. And you can also set the white balance, and the good thing is you can set it once and then just lock the auto white balance here. that's quite versatile, that the colors are not changing during the shoot when you have auto white balance. The second tab is the color settings overall. So they are offering now for a paid upgrade of I think 10 euros, an in-app purchase, these color profiles, which are natural, dynamic, flat and log. That's quite versatile to use this log profile, because when you want to use, for example, the video footage to color grade later on, then you get quite a flat image. And you can also move the histogram around, just playing around with the midtones, the lights and the darks, as well as just bumping up the shadows and the highlights, for example. Then you can just style this in here manually. And on the third tab, you have a histogram of your RGB levels, where you can set saturation, so you can even more desaturate your image, or you can just bump up the dynamics of your colors a bit, so the vibrance here. And you can also reset it everything by just tapping on the arrow here on the bottom. So that's pretty much it. Hope you liked it, and keep on shooting on your mobile. I will give a follow-up on how well this will work out, especially on Android with the frame rates and the consistency of the frame rates. So this setting here, to force FPS, I'm really excited that they introduced something like this, and hopefully it will work out well, because it was not that stable in the past with this app, and also with other apps there were some quirks and it wasn't working that well. So keep it up, hope you liked it. Drop some comments and maybe you subscribe. I will do later on also some gimbal work with it, and let's see how this will work out. Thanks a lot. See you soon. Bye bye.
Your life could depend on this.